Hello, everyone. We're so glad to have you all, to have all our guests and participants to talk today a little bit more about menopause. Is technology actually a solution? And this is our main topic. And I also wanted to add that this is our just first live interview of the whole series, State of FemTech Plus. I have hope to see you there next Thursday also. We're going to talk about sex tech. Is it entertainment versus health? So another interesting subject. But today we're going to start with menopause. So give you voice.
Yeah, so a quick introduction from me. So I'm Sarah, this is Claudia. We both work at Untitled Kingdom, and we are pretty much a software development company, but a software development company that has been focusing on FemTech for over 7 years now. It's not just FemTech, also everything related to health tech, and also other things, but FemTech is one of our main focus, main interest. And partially because of that, last year we were writing an ebook that was published at the beginning of this year, The State of FemTech. And when we were writing this ebook, it was becoming pretty obvious that FemTech is mature enough already that it's becoming very difficult to treat it as one field. It's just a huge subject that already has a lot of fields in it. And because of that, we wanted to meet and discuss some of the subjects in a bit more detail because it was not possible to get all the knowledge and all the information in one place. And we believe that menopause is one of the most interesting subjects, one of the most interesting fields in FemTech currently. First of all, because of growing target group users who will need those solutions, and second of all, because there's still not a lot of solutions on the market. And we're still waiting for what's going to happen in this field, but it's still a bit of a taboo and it's not a very popular subject. So we hope we're going to make it popular, and that's why we want to talk about it with our guests today.
Yeah, so small introduction of our noble guests. We have today with us Garnier, who is a founder and CEO of Lisa Health. It's a solution for midlife women that helps them in transition to menopause. Prior to Lisa Health, Anne held a few executive roles in healthcare market and healthcare companies. And she sits also on the advisory board for FemTech Collective and the Healthcare Businesswomen Association Bay Area Chapter. Our another guest is Sill Angelo, who is co-founder of Gennev and CEO. And it's the first ever clinic for women in menopause. Jill has over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, including 15 years in executive roles at Microsoft. She joined also the board of directors for Special Olympics of Washington. And our last guest is Clare-Louise Knox, who is award-nominated business psychologist, specializing in women's health at work. She also is a PhD researcher at King's College London and member of government task force addressing menstrual education and stigma in the UK. So that's about that's a small introduction of our guests. And just quick note for our participants, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the Q&A section just below in your window.
Unfortunately, we don't have an option to give you an open mic. But if you ask any question in the QA, we will try to answer it as soon as possible. So we're not going to wait with the questions till the end of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you for this addition. Thank you very much. So let's start our conversation actually about FemTech. Because when we were writing State of FemTech ebook, we saw that a founder pattern quote, and it was like, I have a health problem, a health issue, and I don't have a solution on the market to tackle that, to treat that. So what's your story actually in menopause technology market? What's the story of founding your companies? So let's start maybe with Anne.
Well, I've been in healthcare technology my whole career, and I was in the process of exploring opportunities in FemTech when I decided to start my own company, and it just coincided with my own menopause transition. And as is very similar to what other women experience, the disappointing doctor visit, the confusion around Dr. Google and Facebook, and the lack of really information and answers technology. And so in solving for my own menopause symptoms and restoring my well-being, to me, technology was a key sort of component of that. So that's essentially how Lisa Health was started, is just, me wanting to solve for myself and then realizing that if I could do it for me, that I could just do this for women around the globe. And so it just became an all-consuming passion and mission for me.
Great. So what's your story, Jill?
Similar to Anne, I've transitioned into my kind of perimenopause start, and I'm just getting started. But when I started Gennev back in 2016, I was coming out of a long-time career at Microsoft, and part of my last role there as the chief of staff to our chief marketing officer was to really lead our senior leadership women's team, our senior women's leadership team. And it was interesting, the conversations that as they talked amongst themselves at the events and the meetings that we would have, really had transitioned from, being new moms to really moving into perimenopause, and just the challenges they experienced, whether it was trouble sleeping or trouble concentrating or just fatigue. And so that was kind of the first wind I got about women in the workplace in menopause. And as I moved into starting Gennev and met my co-founder, Jackie Brandwin, who built Neutrogena, she had been through menopause, and it really made the challenge of getting great care around menopause apparent to me. And so we started the business, and it's been great because now as I'm starting to move through my journey, I'm certainly, running a company that is aligned with my own personal needs. And oftentimes the things I go through, it helps me understand our customers so much better. But I certainly hope at some point, and I'm glad that Claire's on the call too, like as we think about the workplace, we've never really addressed menopause in the workplace. And so I think that's still an outstanding area that needs a lot of attention and detail, but it was really where I kind of first saw menopause starting to impact women in my journey to starting Gennev.
Yeah, thank you. So what's your story, Claire? Is it a pattern too?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I am not perimenopausal. I haven't experienced menopause yet. However, I do live with a menstrual health condition, and that's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. If you haven't heard of it, it is a serious condition, and there's a lot of overlap actually between the PMDD symptoms that women experience and also perimenopause symptoms. So I can sympathise with the psychological impact of perimenopause and some of the physical symptoms. But my journey really started as a secondary school teacher, and I was really, really struggling to manage being at work while I was finding it really difficult and experiencing anxiety and depression and fatigue that was all linked to PMDD. And as you do, I got onto Dr. Google and was looking at what workplace support exists for PMDD, how can I tell my manager about PMDD, and found nothing, absolutely nothing. And then that kind of opened up Pandora's box, if you will, and I realized that there's actually no education, awareness, or support for any kind of menstrual or reproductive health condition in the workplace. And so I retrained as a business psychologist, really with the mission to give women's health a voice in the workplace, and champion that. And that's how See Her Thrive was born, and so that's what we do.
Okay, so what were the main obstacles to find your to start your companies? Actually, it was a problem with funding, with a narrow target group. What were the main problems to do that in the beginning of it? So let's start with Anne.
Sure. Well, I've helped to start many, many venture-backed companies, either as a early executive or advisor. And so I have a lot of experience in just the mechanics of the startup process. I think when it came to Lisa Health, a big challenge is just, the taboo around menopause, and I think fortunately we're finally breaking through that, thanks to the efforts of colleagues like Jill and others in the space, but we still have a long way to go to sort of break down the silence, shame, and invisibility around that experience. And so I think if you want to start a company around menopause, you just have to understand that you're really blazing a trail that is vastly different from, say, pregnancy, which is, a widely celebrated and supported event. And, trailblazing is high. I mean, there's just a huge level of effort around the missionary work required to educate the market on why menopause matters. And so when you undertake that journey, it really requires an immense courage, optimism, perseverance for sure, and a lot of hard work. So I think, as we break through the taboo around menopause, it'll be much easier for others coming into the space. But I think that was probably has been one of the challenges.
I'll add on to that. I think that's well stated, because that is the top challenge. You would think funding is always the question, is always the challenge, but if you don't get your constituents and your customers like talking about it and seeking it out, like the market's massive. Like every woman goes through menopause, and so starting a menopause company, you think, oh, that's going to be relatively straightforward in acquiring customers or users. Or helping these women. But to Anne's point, because it's so stigmatized, it's still really a hidden conversation. I'll add on top of that, when you've got that challenge, bringing in funding is an additional hurdle. This is my first venture-backed company. So unlike Anne, I'm new to this space and probably naive in some ways, which has probably helped me persevere a little bit because I haven't known, greater challenges that lie ahead. And yet, it's kind of a gift because, obviously I'm passionate about the space, but when you talk to an investor about menopause, obviously the big market potentials is very, very much attractive, but how is it also big business, and are women ready to seek out help and find solutions? We often use a stat that 93% of women who go through menopause don't get any help at all. And probably the biggest reason why is they don't seek it out because they just don't even understand what they're going through. And so when your biggest kind of competitor is women not doing something about their health or seeking out help from a care provider or from a platform or from a product, that's a huge hurdle to overcome with an investor who wants to also look at this space as big business. So we're not only destigmatizing this, but we're also creating a new motion for consumers to get the help that they haven't even known is available or even something they can seek out to improve their quality of life.
Well, I would just tag on to that really quickly. I think women are seeking knowledge and solutions, but they're getting it from the wrong place. They're going to Dr. Google and Facebook, as I mentioned earlier, and they're trying a lot of things that have little to no evidence that they work. And so I think the burden is on us as, you know, the pioneers in this space to really educate women that there are new alternatives that are more reliable, expert, trustworthy. You know, we really, as I said earlier, have this sort of missionary educational obligation, you know, to make this market what we all know it can be.
I think we have some questions on QA and chat, so maybe let's just see the head before we move on.
So the question is, which market is the most promising in case of utilizing solutions for women in menopausal age? Which one is the most mature in your opinion?
Which market is the most promising in utilizing solutions? I'll jump in. How we've kind of thought about the menopausal market comes from a menopause assessment that we launched about 18 months ago. And essentially this assessment is about a 7 to 8 minute questionnaire that women can take that helps them understand, number one, kind of am I in menopause, and if so, where in that journey? We typically, as consumers, we want roadmaps to our health. You know, through pregnancy, we have first trimester, second and third, even through pediatric care with children. We kind of know the schedule of things to do for our child. In menopause, that schedule or that journey just doesn't exist. And so we've tried to help educate women by creating the menopause journey map, which is something that we've done at Gennev. And through that, we've learned what segment or where in that transition, probably the population within overall menopause, because menopause is premenopause and postmenopause, which women in that journey are in need of most help. And what we find is the perimenopausal women, so the women before they've met that 12-month anniversary of no menstrual cycle, are the ones that seek out help. They're the largest population who have taken that assessment in our community. And they're going through a lot of change. And the reason why I think they're seeking help is they're Gen X, they're my generation for sure. And we've grown up going online for help and support and answers. But second, they're experiencing the most change because they're coming from what was to, oh my gosh, there's now changes that are unexplainable, whether it's in my menstrual cycle or in weight, or in mood swings and shifts, or my inability to sleep. And their lifestyles haven't changed. It's just that their bodies have. And it's very mysterious in many ways to them. And so for us, our largest portion of the menopausal market is certainly the perimenopausal women. And that's generally 40s, early 50s in our community.
We actually have an interesting question on the chat as well, is how do you get women in their 40s to realize my symptoms are actually menopausal? I think this is a pretty big issue as well, because a lot of women in their 40s think it's still ahead of them, that it's still like it's going to happen in my 50s or my 60s. We're still not educated very well about the symptoms. So what can technology do for that? What can we do as founders, as people who are dealing with technology to educate users, educate women around the world that they actually can get help? Because usually not realizing what's happening leads to not getting any help.
Well, I mean, I'll jump in. We're big proponents of redefining the well woman visit, the annual visit that every woman ideally has. And whether that's an in-person visit or a visit that happens, through telehealth, I think that conversation about menopause, what to expect, the timing, the signs and symptoms to look for, that really needs to happen so much earlier. I mean, we have these conversations with young girls about preparing for their first period. We talk about the first sexual encounter. We talk about, preparing for your first pregnancy. And then it's like a radio silence when it comes to menopause. And that has to change. So we have to sort of back up and just examine, the whole, I think, healthcare continuum for women, and why there's just such a sharp sort of drop off or decline in education and preparation for this really vital, what I call fourth stage, the menopause life stage, which is 30 years. And it's, I think Jill was right in saying that, perimenopause is a very activating phase for women because their bodies are changing. They don't know what's happening. They feel out of control. We as women are typically like to be in control, and it's very disconcerting when we're not. And then when you're not getting answers, that's also very troublesome. But, the symptoms can last for, a number of years, on average 5 to 7, for some women 10 to 20 years. And so you're really looking at menopause being a significant phase of life. It's about a third of a woman's life, in fact. And so her needs change over time. And I think technology is best positioned to really recognize and adapt to those changes and deliver a personalized journey all across the life stage. And so that's, at least the health, that's what we're focused on, is the entire life stage. We do, like Jill, see a lot of women coming in the perimenopausal phase, but we also have a lot of women who are older who are using our platform because their needs have changed and they're concerned about something else.
Yeah, so another subject is menopause in the workplace, because we know that in 5 years, we will have 12% of the population globally that is in menopause. And we have a data that 50% almost women admit that menopause negatively affected their work productivity, and almost 50% needed to take time off because of the syndromes. So Claire, how can we just address those problems, those challenges of people in the workplace?
That's a great question, and the way that we are addressing that is by educating HR teams and managers first and foremost, because they really do need to be upskilled with the right knowledge and the right awareness about how menopause can and does affect women at work. It can have a huge impact on confidence. It can cause a lot of difficulties when it comes to performance management, to absenteeism, presenteeism. So making managers and HR teams in particular aware of those things so that they can actively provide support is a really important piece of that puzzle. We provide consultancy to organisations about introducing menopause policies and really looking at the culture of the organisation and saying, do the practices actually enable women to thrive, or are they detrimental to women who perhaps need more flexibility, who need time off to attend medical appointments, who need to be able to work from home? So that's really key. Unfortunately, there is a really frustrating piece to that, which is the business case, which we do have to lead in with. So, making senior leaders understand that there is a business impact, there is an impact on the bottom line. But yeah, for me, it's about awareness, and it's about increasing the level of understanding and empathy. And more often than not, when we work with organisations, the people that we deliver training to in our online courses, they're shocked. They have no idea that menopause can affect women in such a significant way. And it's not done out of malice. It's just that we've never had to talk about menopause in the workplace before. We've never worked as long as we are now. There have never been as many women in the workplace before. It's never been an issue. But generally people want to be supportive and they want to know what they can do to help. So that that knowledge and awareness is really the crucial first step, and then it's about the solutions and the support. But without the awareness and the knowledge, it needs to come first.
I think, you know, and in the U.S., from a workplace perspective, we're even behind where you are in the U.K. and Europe around recognizing, you know, menopause in the workplace. You know, yeah, when you think about the women that are impacted by this, I think in the U.S., I saw a stat that 20% of our workplace are women of menopausal age. And so, to your point, we are working longer. We're a bigger part of the workforce. But what we've seen here a little bit recently in the US is HR has a lot to think about. A lot of diversity and inclusion teams within companies now are starting to reach out and want to drive these conversations. And it's a little bit more about retaining and helping this category of their employees be the most productive that they can be. And so there might be a different route to approaching this in terms of that education. But what I'm inspired by organizations that are starting to, whether they reach out to us to come and speak with their women's groups, or if they're thinking about it and starting to talk about it internally, it's coming from an inclusion point of view and perspective, which I think is healthy for everybody. And at least that conversation and education is starting to happen. But like you said, that's the first step to making it actually start to take impact and supporting women in the workplace.
Well, our data, I'm sorry, I was going to say, you know, our data at Lisa Health echoes, you know, the impact on productivity. And, you know, I think women historically have been concerned about being perceived as aging or less productive, less capable if they talk about, you know, their menopause symptoms. But it's interesting to note that, you know, employers for a long time have supported women during pregnancy and, you know, fertility in recent years. And that's wonderful. But they have a retention problem with that age group. You know, a lot of those women are not coming back. And particularly now with the COVID crisis, you know, younger women are opting out of the workforce because it's just becoming too difficult to manage everything that's going on. And so I've always, maybe because I'm a midlife woman, but I've always held the point of view that midlife women are an employer's most valuable talent asset, and that they need to be maximized. I mean, we're the ones, quite honestly, we have the tribal knowledge. We can always be relied upon to get the job done, no matter what symptoms we're experiencing. So I think that employers, you know, need to recognize that supporting women's health does mean more than pregnancy and fertility. I think fortunately some are starting to, you know, as Jill mentioned, and Claire, are starting to slowly come around to that conversation about providing more support. I think they're in a unique position, you know, quite honestly, to recognize and support these women with the tools and resources that are really designed around this specific life stage, because, you know, I do think that there's unconscious bias that occurs in the workplace, and it's not just around gender and race. I think it can be around midlife women and what they're going through during menopause. So I think we need to really recognize, and I think those teams are starting to recognize that they need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, I think there's a huge stigma around that. Probably not only in the workplace, but also everywhere. We're still not saying it out loud. This is a subject that is still very big taboo. I think period was this type of taboo like 10 years ago. Now it's very different. Now all workplaces do acknowledge that we do have periods, that that women generally menstruate, and it's nothing horrible or nothing that shouldn't be talked about. So I hope that this is opening the door for discussion about the menopause, and it looks like it's already happening, which is amazing, because a couple of years ago it would be nobody would be interested in it. Maybe not a couple of years ago, but 10 years ago, all of those subjects were just complete taboo. Do we want to ask another questions? Or?
Yeah, we have many questions, so
Yeah.
I'll try to...
A lot of activity.
Yeah, a lot of activity. We're happy for that. Thank you, participants. There is an interesting question. Would you be able to explain the biological effects of the menopause? Or perhaps where are the best places of resources to explore this? I've been mostly investigating the psychosocial influences, but curious about understanding more of the science.
Well, that's a big question, right, Jill?
It is. It totally is. It totally is. Go ahead, Anne, and I'll...
No, you start. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not at all. Yeah, I know. Where do we begin is kind of probably, just in super simple form. I always say, just like we went through puberty as young people and hormones flooded our body, in menopause, those hormones start to leave. So we often say it's kind of like puberty the second time around, but the opposite thing happens. And so that's a super layman's term for what's going on in the body biologically. But the estrogen, particularly, there's other hormones as well, but the estrogen that we're losing during this transition that then, stops our menstrual cycles. It also really, it does so many other things in our bodies. It gives us moisture. It coats our brains or protects our brains against, any kind of trauma or onset of dementia and Alzheimer's. It protects our hair and our skin and keeps them vibrant and moisturized. It also, in some ways, very much, addresses mood balance, our ability to sleep. It's got impacts across over 34, well, they always say there's 34 different symptoms of menopause, but its impact across each of those 34, sometimes it's a domino effect. So one of those symptoms might be caused by another one that's caused by the declining level of estrogen. And that's what makes menopause so complex, and no woman experiences it like any other woman. So it's also no one size fits all to menopause. So from a science perspective, I think this is the most underfunded, under-researched part of women's health there is. We know very little, unfortunately. And so, even in our work, Anne talked about the data they're studying. We're studying data too, and really trying to understand why, correlations between what's happening in a woman's body and when, and even over time, hopefully being able to project and recommend solutions based upon what a woman is going to experience based on what she's going through now. That's like such pioneering work, and there's so much work to do there. And there kind of can't be enough players in this space using technology to securely acquire data and then to study it so that we do innovate on new products, new approaches, new platforms for women in this space. So much opportunity to do so. And what talk a little bit about probably all the tons of gaps that I left there, but
no, I think you covered it beautifully at a high level. It is, I think, the most complex life stage a woman will experience. And we just, have kind of scratched the surface from a research perspective. I do want to acknowledge that there are a group of an incredibly smart, committed people who do continue to, sort of push this forward. There's anybody who's a data geek, kind of like me, there are several large studies that have been going on for decades. The study of women across the nation in the US, SWAN for short, in the UK, the Million Women study, and others around the world are contributing to this. But it's really, I think, private enterprise that's going to accelerate the research and solutions in menopause. I think, academic-based research has its limitations, funding obviously being a key one. But I think we're uniquely positioned to provide this innovative, enabling technology and importantly, establish relationships with a very large, diverse group of women. When you recruit for a research study, it's hard. I've done it before. And, even if it's a compelling sort of project, it's not an easy task, but I think if you have women who are actively seeking out, platforms like we're offering through the different avenues, whether it's consumer or through the employer, we're going to get this critical mass. And so that's really going to provide the data we need that's going to accelerate this pace of discovery. But I would like to note that, along with that, wonderful position of advancing research, it really comes this enormous responsibility of protecting the data and privacy of our communities, while we're advancing the understanding and solutions for menopause, and of course, trying to make money. So it's a balancing act, but we all need to be committed to getting it right, because I think for us, at least the health, nothing is more important than the privacy and security of our community.
Okay, yeah, I agree. It's a huge subject from building a product perspective. But again, I believe that it's going to be possible to get really huge amount of data and to analyze it once we have a lot of products out there who can gather this data. Because as you said, finding people who want to take part in clinical research is not that easy, but giving them a product with, of course, completely anonymous data, but being able to analyze some patterns, some behaviors, and some symptoms can give us a lot of answers once we see it in a lot bigger numbers than we're capable of doing it right now. But I actually, before I was asking a little bit about the technology, but I didn't ask the full question. I wanted to jump a little bit into the future, because we are aware that right now we're lacking research still. It's still happening. We still don't have all the information about it. People are still lacking education about it. A lot of women are still not aware what's happening to them or where to seek help or solutions. But other than education and other than creating better workplace environment for women during menopause, what can technology do about the symptoms? Because there is one thing regarding understanding what's happening to me, but there's another side of reacting to it. And if I understand why my joints hurt, for example, it's easier for me to find help for it. But are there any solutions already on the market, or is it possible in the nearest future to create solutions that can actually help go through the symptoms physically?
Well, I think we're all trying to do that with our respective platforms, but go ahead, Claire.
No, it's fine, carry on.
You go.
So I was just going to say, I think one of the challenges, or perhaps it's an opportunity actually, is that there are so many symptoms when it comes to menopause. We've got the physical vasomotor symptoms, and we've got the more psychological symptoms. And so it would be very difficult for one app or piece of tech to be able to address the spectrum of symptoms. But there's a huge opportunity, because we know, for example, that cognitive behavioral therapy has been shown to help with managing hot flushes and night sweats. So, something like that, if that could be digitized, then that has huge potential. But yeah, the technology is great. My concern is that, well, it comes back to accessibility, and how do we make sure that all women have access to the technology and to these solutions and to the telehealth and all of these things that rely on internet access and having a smart device. We know that there's still a huge number of people in society who don't have that access. So it is a privileged position to be in. So I think that, from a kind of social perspective, is something that we need to also think about.
I think that's a great point, Claire. Accessibility is just huge. Obviously telehealth has the potential to reach women who don't have access to good care providers, but it has to be priced or available via insurance or however, in a way that's accessible to the masses, not just to the top 1% that can afford larger ticket items for a specialized program. One additional thing on technology, or two areas, there's some amazing, I think, innovation right now in devices that are very much pointed at specific symptom control, whether it's managing temperature in a wearable or whether it's managing vaginal atrophy and treating that through a device. Great innovation there on the technology side from a device perspective, and that's where you start to get these point solutions that focus on a specific symptom area. I think a second area where technology can actually do more than just educate and make women aware, but actually solve their problems, and this is what we're striving for at Gennev. Anne mentioned earlier that women are seeking out solutions, and the fact that they're just trying all this stuff, it's like trial and error, and they spend a lot of time and money trying to find something that works. We've got to be able to cut that down for women in terms of that speed to finding the effective solution. And that's one thing at Gennev we feel we can start to make a difference on. With, like, for example, our menopause assessment, the more we know about a woman, the more we can make recommendations, whether it's over-the-counter products, whether it's services, whether it's things in our platform or other partner solutions that come into that platform. We've got to find that trial and error. We've got to shrink that down so women get the best recommendation for what they're going through versus just spending months, sometimes we hear years for women trying different doctors or different approaches until they find one that works for them. I think technology can play a very big role there. We're at the super early stages of that because you've got to have a lot of data to do that in a reliable, secure way for the user. But that's personally where we hope we can start to use technology to actually solve symptom issues, not just educate the user.
Yeah,
I mean, I was just going to say that precision medicine, I mean, that's really the future of medicine as a whole, and menopause shouldn't be left out of that. So we really need to strongly advocate and push forward. And data is, of course, key to that, sort of getting to that level of understanding of the different symptoms. And, anyone who's wanting to get into menopause, I think Jill made a good point. With 34 possible symptoms, there's a lot of opportunity to innovate across that spectrum, developing, point solutions that address a problem that, a large percentage of women have, whether it's, women with hot flashes at 85% or women with vaginal dryness. There are many, many areas, and I think we haven't really, I think Claire has made some great points around the behavioral aspects of menopause, but we need to appreciate that it really is a unique sort of biobehavioral life stage, and you have to address both. You have to address the clinical as well as the behavioral things that are happening, the anxiety, depression, irritability. Those are all very prevalent, and so it's not a one size fits all. It is very much a unique precision medicine approach that's required for each woman.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, as Jill mentioned, there are already some solutions on the market that would help with some of the symptoms. Probably we are not capable of creating one perfect solution, at least not yet, before fully understanding what's happening there. But there are those solutions on the market. They could help with the symptoms, but they're almost never advertised for women or for menopause symptoms. They're advertised as something completely different. So before you find something like that, you would have to understand a lot better what's happening, and you would have to know what you're looking for to find those devices or whatever that would be, some solutions, digital solutions. So I really hope that's a subject that people in technology will soon start taking care of. They will see the potential of the subject, and with your research and the research that is happening currently, with gathering all the data that we can combine the information we got from there, we can create solutions that are personalized, that are precision medicine, and then provide those users with solutions that are either already on the market or create some other solutions that can combine some of the options of devices that are already there, just not thought of as something for menopause.
Yeah, so let's jump to maybe our questions, because we have a new Q&A section, a few more questions to answer. And one is linked to the future of menopause, actually. Has anyone came across interesting research regarding the use of virtual and or augmented reality in supporting women dealing with the menopause? We started our project and interested in exploring the educational and potentially therapeutic aspects of VR, for example, using it across mental health, pain management, and temperature management, physiotherapy, and haven't come across a lot yet.
So maybe I'll start just quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe that will spark a discussion. So generally, I haven't seen any research like that, but what I believe is that looking for technology first and then trying to find a problem that this technology can solve or could be good in solving usually doesn't work very well. So I think it's best to start looking at the symptoms, at the problems that you would like to solve, and then try to find how this technology is actually the best solution for this problem. We don't want to use huge, like from the user's perspective, from people who are going to use it, they don't like technology. Most of the people really hate technology. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes they're curious about it, but if it's a big technology like VR and AR, they are fun, but mostly to younger people, and they are fun if they serve the purpose. So convincing users now, when this is still very new field and there's a pretty small group of people who are interested in it, maybe not interested, there's a lot of people interested in VR and AR, but not a lot of people have access to it yet. I think that it's better to start simple and then make it bigger and bigger. So I would ask the question from the other way. So what is the best solution for psychological effects, and not how VR or AR can help for psychological effects?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in VR, but my understanding is that it's had a little bit of a rocky road in terms of adoption. And so I think looking at the market, and whether or not, particularly in this demographic, there's not only the application, as you just mentioned, but also whether or not the market is really there. Probably those would be the steps that I would take.
So maybe another question from me, not from participants, but we'll jump to it. So I'm curious because when we were writing our The State of FemTech ebook, we saw that it has segments like menopause, but menopause also has segments. And my question is, does it divide, and is menopause different in different ethnic groups actually?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. In some of our data, we're starting to see how women of different ethnicities experience different symptoms that have a bigger impact on their quality of life than others. And some of that comes down to, we're not studying their genetic background, we're only studying them as a category, and some of that probably goes towards lifestyle. And so better documenting and understanding that is certainly part of, as we look at the gross population health, population data that we have in our menopause assessment, but then also parsing that by ethnicity. Thus far, we've started to study the symptom differences amongst different ethnic groups in the United States in particular, so that we can approach them in relevant ways that speak to their needs. So we're doing it a little bit more from a go-to-market versus really adjusting our point solutions to address symptoms differently. The symptoms might not be different, just their propensity or the rate at which they experience them compared to other groups is what we're seeing right now, and trying to address in how we support them.
Sure. I mean, in addition to the data that I think we're all collectively collecting, you know, there has been a lot of work done. The SWAN data set, for example, they've done a lot of work in sort of digging into the ethnic differences in how women experience menopause. And so that's a good resource. Dr. Nanette Santoro is one of the lead researchers for SWAN, actually did write a great educational piece for Lisa Health on this topic. You know, happy to share that out. But in addition to ethnicity, you know, we do see in the data that women with lower incomes, less education, that their symptomatology will manifest differently. They may even be at higher risk of experiencing menopause early, which is not desirable from a health risk perspective, because it might impact them from a cardiovascular perspective, as well as osteoporosis and even dementia. But if you really want to dig into the cultural aspects of menopause, a book that was published last year, The Slow Moon Climbs by Susan Mattern. It's a really, really well-researched book that looks at that cultural differences globally around menopause. I mean, in some cultures, there's actually not even a word for it, and women don't report any impact. And it's an event that's celebrated. It confers status on these women. They're really cherished members of their community. And so she, you know, the author asserts that really menopause emerged as a medical condition in the West around 1700, kind of coincident with the rise of a male-dominated medical profession that started to label women as, you know, hysterical, melancholy. So it's incredible to me that women are actually still being dismissed by the medical system in menopause, as well as for other things. And so anyone who wants to really dig in more to understand the ethnic and cultural differences, I think there is a lot of good resources that you can check out.
I'll just throw in two studies that might be of interest. So the Pan-Asian Menopause Study, which was had a sample of over 1,000 women, and the second one is the Asian Menopause Survey, which again had a sample of over 1,000 women from, I think, 11 Asian countries. And the findings from those studies showed that women do experience symptoms differently. So women in those particular studies reported muscle and joint pain as the most troublesome symptoms, whereas in the West, it tends to be the hot flashes and night sweats. So there does seem to be a difference, and that again has been put down to differences in diet and nutrition. There's a lot of soy in the Asian diet, which, you know, has been to be a contributing factor. But again, there's that socio-cultural model as well that Anne spoke about. So it's really interesting. Is it biological or is it cultural, or it's probably multifactorial?
So let's jump into maybe Q&A section to link that with your answer. How is the established medical community reacting to digital offerings like Lisa Health or Gennev?
Well, Jill, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. You know, in terms of the medical community, we've seen it embraced, you know, in our practitioners. So we're Gennev as an online clinic. We are evidence-based medicine. We have 25 different OBGYNs, a naturopathic doctor, as well as a handful of health coaches that focus more on the lifestyle aspect. And they work together. We know, obviously, not every woman wants to go a medical and prescription route. Some really want to tackle this more natural and through lifestyle. And so we hope that the approach that we bring to women can give her both the medical, if she wants that, as well as the lifestyle support that she needs. When you think about the medical community, at least that's been part of our platform, they obviously, all of our specialists specialize in menopause. And, there was a question earlier around, or a statement around, GPs or physicians need more education on menopause. It is, it's menopause isn't part of a lot of the education curriculum a GP or primary care physician receives. And even OBGYNs, at least in the United States, receive a small fraction of their total education focused on menopause. So it starts with our medical team and their understanding. And I think that's why you've seen other disciplines, whether it's naturopathic care, holistic care, health coaches, really start to grow in this space, because a lot of what women experience is lifestyle oriented, that they can start to manage and control. But overall, I think from a healthcare or the healthcare industry perspective, the reception's really picking up, not so much yet from the education foundation, but those that want to step up to do something for this community. We've seen great progress in that area.
Yeah, I've had an incredible reception from the beginning, because like Jill, we come at this, from the perspective of evidence-based medicine, and, I think have worked really hard to forge, close connections with the medical community. I mean, they see us as being able to really support their practice, whether there's someone who is less well trained in menopause and people who are expert, because even if you do have the training, you may not have the time to unpack all of the things that are happening with a woman across, again, this very long life stage. And so they really see us, helping to bridge the gap and actually forge closer relationships and communication, and more meaningful communication, because now women can come in with data. They can track their symptoms with Lisa Health, and now they come in and they say, okay, here's how frequently my hot flashes are happening and how severe they are. And that really can be a game changer in terms of the conversation you're having and the options. But, as Jill mentioned, lifestyle plays a really big role in how you experience menopause. And the majority of physicians actually recommend a course of lifestyle interventions of, at least, 3 to 6 months before any prescription-based therapy. Of course, that's not true for women who are having very severe symptoms and need more immediate intervention. But for the majority of women, they really like to see them undertake a lifestyle plan. And that's, part of the service that we provide with Lisa Health is a comprehensive, we kind of call it a journey, but a comprehensive set of evidence-based lifestyle activities that you can start to work on. Habit change takes a while, right? And you need a lot of support around that. But that's what platforms like ours are attempting to do, is not just to address this from a pharmaceutical perspective, but really from a 360 lifestyle plus other solutions that are out there.
Yeah, I think that, sorry, go on, Claire, go on.
I was just going to pick up on what Jill said about the lack of menopause training in the US, and it's the same in the UK. So our general practitioners, good God, they've got a lot to do, and this is by no means me pointing the finger and having a go at them and ripping them to shreds, but menopause and women's health is not part of standard GP training in the UK. That's our first point of contact in the UK. So we go to see our GP, who, might not know anything about menopause, how to diagnose menopause, and they are the gatekeepers to treatment and support and care. And if you don't get past that first hurdle, what hope have you got? So I'm sitting here thinking it's so good that we have these solutions, because it really does, it gives an alternative route to the right care and treatment that women need and they deserve. So it's just fantastic that we are starting to see these alternative options. But at a very basic level, we need menopause and menstrual related conditions to be part of GP and all kind of healthcare provider education. It's so important, and too many women are falling through the cracks, and it's not acceptable.
Yeah, we know that as women we should educate ourselves about menopause, but should we educate men?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, it's so critical to how a woman experiences menopause. There's actually been studies done on it, and women who have a very engaged partner have a higher quality of life and a better experience overall. So we do provide partner education as part of our platform, and really have a whole track just designed around having the conversation and navigating the relationship through this phase, because you can't leave that piece out. You know, I've just heard from women firsthand how difficult it is when their partner isn't supportive or doesn't understand. But I think there are a lot of men out there who do care very, very deeply. They just, you know, they don't know what to do. One of my physician advisors, she reports that about 50% of her patients that come in, it was actually their male partner who made the appointment and actually attended the appointment. So there are men out there who are really trying to be part of this journey. But I think it's again, part of our service that we provide to help support that and forge that closer connection through this time.
Something that we do is we deliver a session called Menopause, which is specifically for male colleagues and managers, because what we found was when we were going into workplaces to deliver menopause sessions, you'd have a room full of women, which is fantastic, but men also have questions and concerns, and they need a safe space to voice those questions, and they don't know how to ask those things, and they're worried about saying the wrong thing and upsetting their colleagues, and they don't want to cause offense. So we've had a really, really positive response, and every time we run these sessions, they sell out, which just shows
Awesome.
that men really do want to be involved in the conversation. And it's, you know, if we look at education, I don't know what it's like where you're from, but in the UK, when we have our sex education and period education in school, boys are told to leave the room and then made to go and do a PE lesson or something like that. And so from a very young age, we're saying to boys and young men, this conversation does not concern you. But it does, it really does. It's such an important part of life. We have to function together, and we know that menopause has such a huge impact on relationships, on sex, on intimacy, and beyond that in the workplace. You know, male colleagues and managers, they want to help, and yeah, so I think it is a conversation that needs to be inclusive. And just something else to add, we've also got same-sex couples who might be going through the menopause together but having a very different experience. So that partner piece, whether it's a male partner or a female partner, it's so important, and that partner support is crucial.
I think what's also interesting, not good, but interesting, is that when we're growing up, we're going through puberty, we usually talk to our mothers, to our grandmothers. We see when they go through the menopause, so we kind of know what to expect. Maybe we're not fully educated because at least in Poland, schools do not educate us on this subject at all, just a little bit about fertility. But we do have at least some picture of what's happening, what was happening to our to other generations, and men do not see it. When they're teenagers, they do not usually, like, they're outside of the subject of grandmother having hot flashes or something like that. Women do not talk about it in front of young boys. So they don't have this education in school, they don't have this education at home, and then they have partners who are going through this, or colleagues at work, and they have usually probably no idea what's happening because they've never seen it and never learned about it. They've heard about it probably, I hope, but never really learned anything more.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, that we're running out of time because it's 1 hour. And I think that because we gathered so many unanswered questions, we'll try to, I think, gather them and pass to our noble guests to prolong that conversation in the emails. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So any final thoughts that you would like to share with all our listeners?
You know, thank you for covering this topic. The more conversations we have like this, and it's fun to do this with Claire and with Anne, and get different perspectives on how we're all like working with women in this industry. These forums are just fabulous. So thanks for doing it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I appreciate it as well. And just, a shout out to the audience. I think we need the brightest minds, the most passionate people, obviously more financial support to achieve what is achievable. And so we would love to have more people coming into this space, joining us. There's a lot of room. It's a big problem worthy of solving. So that's just my shout out to the audience. But thank you, Untitled Kingdom. And it was great, Jill, of course, to see you again, and Claire, to meet you as well.
Echo all of that. Yes, thank you. It's been wonderful. And just thank you to everybody who's joined and who's invested this hour to learn and to hear about menopause. And I guess my plea is, if you are in an organization and you are working with women, please do try and be empathetic towards their experiences, and let's talk about menopause. Let's not shy away from those conversations, and let's just normalize it and make it part of the everyday as it should be.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure. I admire everything you do and all the knowledge that you're sharing with us, with the listeners, and generally with people. It's really great. I hope this field is going to become bigger and more popular, and it's going to be less taboo soon. I know it's going to take a while, but I'm really, really happy that it already started and we are actually talking about it openly. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. It was incredible conversation, and unfortunately just 1 hour, but I feel that we can speak with enormous time. So we just wanted to invite you, all of the participants also for our next event next Thursday. We're going to talk about sex tech and is it actually
entertainment or health issue.
Yeah, thank you.
So hopefully we'll have some few different perspectives on what sex tech is and what role it plays in our lives.
Yeah, and we'll send also to all of our participants our ebook, The State of FemTech. So just stay in touch and see you next Thursday. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.